Kavanaugh and his accuser are set to testify before Congress next week amid allegations of sexual assault against the president's Supreme Court nominee. In an article in the Washington Post Sunday, Blasey Ford said Kavanaugh pinned her to a bed and groped her at a party when they were teenagers. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley announced Monday Kavanaugh and Blasey Ford will appear before Congress. The Senate Judiciary Committee chairman said in a statement, "Anyone who comes forward, as Dr. Ford has done, deserves to be heard." CBS News Chief Congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes has the latest.
Senate Republicans huddled today trying to figure out how to handle the now public allegation.
And to go back 35 years to high school, I mean, we're in a very unusual place.
Dr. Blasey Ford, a psychologist and professor, told the Washington Post that Kavanaugh pinned her to a bed on her back and put his hand over her mouth at a party when she was 15 and he 17. "He was trying to attack me and remove my clothing," she said. "I thought he might inadvertently kill me."
I believe her. Many Americans believe her.
Do you have any response to Christine Ford?
Kavanaugh reiterated his denial today, saying this is a completely false allegation, adding, "Because this never happened, I had no idea who was making this accusation until she identified herself yesterday." He and his accuser said they're willing to testify publicly. The president said they should.
Great. I want him to go in at the absolute highest level. And I think to do that, you have to go through this. If it takes a little delay, it'll take a little delay.
That sparked a debate among Republicans today who were hoping to hold a committee vote on Kavanaugh this week.
Democrats have spent weeks and weeks searching for any possible reason that the nomination should be delayed.
But rushing him through now could antagonize undecided Republicans like Susan Collins of Maine.
Senator, do you need to see a public hearing featuring Ford before you can vote on Kavanaugh?
I have said that I believe in order for me to assess the credibility of these allegations, that I want to have both individuals come before the Senate Judiciary Committee and testify under oath.
Ford first shared the allegation with her Congresswoman Anna Eshoo in July, but at the time she wished to remain anonymous.
She was worried about her family. She has young children, her husband.
Eshoo helped Ford write a letter detailing her claims. Last week, word of that letter leaked, which prompted Ford to come forward.
And Nancy Cordes joins me now from Capitol Hill. So, Nancy, both Judge Kavanaugh and his accuser are going to testify to Congress about the allegations. What do we know so far?
Well, we know that the hearing, according to Republicans, is going to take place on Monday morning, that they have invited Judge Kavanaugh and his accuser to testify publicly. And we know that Kavanaugh and Blasey Ford have said that they are willing to testify publicly. What this now means, Elaine, is that the vote that was scheduled to take place in the Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday will no longer happen. They simply have to hold this hearing first before they can hold that vote. That's something that some Republicans were very reluctant to push off, but they're still hoping that they can hold the vote next week, perhaps in the days after the hearing. This, of course, though, creates a lot of uncertainty. This is bound to be a very high-intensity hearing, potentially a very emotional hearing. Both Kavanaugh and his accuser seem very eager to set the record straight. They obviously have very different recollections. And so who knows what is going to come out of this hearing and how it will affect the small number of senators who say that they are still undecided on Kavanaugh.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, Nancy. Do we have a sense? How is the confirmation process going to be impacted here moving forward?
Well, the public hearing appeared to be something that Republicans had to do because you had a couple of moderate senators, particularly Susan Collins of Maine, who said that they do believe that this accuser, who has now come forward, should be heard and should be heard in a public setting. So Republicans, if they didn't hold this hearing, ran the risk of antagonizing someone like Susan Collins or perhaps Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. And then there are some Democrats who haven't said how they're going to vote. Democrats from red states who are up for re-election in the fall, who voted for Neil Gorsuch, haven't said officially that they are going to vote for Kavanaugh. And so all of that was in the mix and under consideration as Senate Republicans kind of went back and forth all day long trying to figure out how to handle these new allegations.
So, Nancy, you mentioned those Democrats who haven't said how they're going to be voting. So could you just name some of them that we should be closely watching after this? Because you mentioned on the Republican side, Senators Collins and Murkowski. Who is it on the Democratic side we should be watching?
Absolutely. Well, you've got Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Senator Joe Donnelly of Indiana, and Senator Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota. These are all Democrats who, as a matter of course, always have to walk a fine line in their states because they're states that went for Donald Trump. These are Democrats who have been elected in the past because they know how to cross over and win some votes from Republicans in their states. And so they were under a great deal of pressure, particularly because they are up for re-election this November in just a month and a half, to vote for Kavanaugh, to show independents, some Republicans, that they are willing to cross the aisle. What we don't know for sure is how these new revelations impact their thinking. Doug Jones, who's another Democrat from a red state, remember he won that special election in Alabama. There was some question about how he would vote as well. And one of the points he made this weekend was that Kavanaugh has never been all that popular in his state to begin with. And so he doesn't feel inordinate pressure to vote one way or the other. He feels that he's going to make up his mind based on who he thinks would be best for the Supreme Court and whether he thinks that Kavanaugh would make a suitable replacement for Anthony Kennedy. And so that may be factoring in to the decisions being made by Manchin and Heitkamp and Donnelly as well. And they now have the luxury to watch and see what happens in this hearing before they announce how they're going to come down.
Nancy, let me ask you about Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, because she has come under some criticism. She reportedly received Blasey Ford's letter, I believe it was in July, but the allegations did not come to light until last week. Now, GOP Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell spoke about this on Monday. Let's listen.
But now, at the 11th hour, with committee votes on schedule, after Democrats have spent weeks and weeks searching for any possible reason that the nomination should be delayed, now they choose to introduce this allegation.
So, Nancy, how is this question of timing affecting this debate and this discussion?
Well, this is something that you've heard about from Republicans a lot. They're very suspicious. They say that this woman wrote a letter that went to Dianne Feinstein during the summer. Feinstein had numerous opportunities to bring it up in the confirmation hearings for Kavanaugh in public, when he went into closed session, when she met one-on-one with him, and she never did. So why is this only coming out now? Democrats say it's very simple. It's because Ford had always said that she didn't want her name made public, and Feinstein was reluctant to air these anonymous allegations if she didn't have an accuser who was willing to basically withstand the heat and be there in the public eye. These are very serious allegations. You're talking about attempted rape, one allegation from 36 years ago, and they say Feinstein just didn't feel comfortable talking about it publicly if she didn't have an accuser who was willing to come forward to back it up. They argue that everything changed over the weekend and that once Ford did speak to the Washington Post and said that she was willing to testify publicly, now they say, well, the FBI should investigate because it's the FBI that does background checks of Supreme Court nominees. And in fact, Democrats have been arguing to us all day, we shouldn't even have this public hearing with Ford and Kavanaugh until after the FBI has had a chance to look into these allegations. Republicans called that a stalling tactic and announced that they they were going to be holding this hearing on Monday, because after all, Elaine, not only do they want to get Kavanaugh confirmed, if they can, in time for the new session of the Supreme Court to start on October 1st, but they also know that there's a midterm election looming and that it's possible that Democrats could take control of the Senate. Republicans have the narrowest of majorities right now, and so they want to take care of this as quickly as they can.
Well, Nancy, with so much at stake, I wonder, in your conversations with Republicans, is there a sense that the White House has a strategy to combat this allegation?
Well, the White House, originally over the weekend, at first seemed to be really ramping up to try to cast doubt on the allegations and the accuser. But something switched. By this morning, it is almost as if they saw the writing on the wall, saw that there was going to have to be a public hearing if they were going to, if the party was really going to show that it was taking these allegations seriously, and to satisfy some of the more moderate Republicans who were insisting that there be some kind of public accounting. And the White House message really changed. And you saw Kellyanne Conway, the senior advisor to the president, coming out and saying, this accuser should be heard, and she will be heard. And that really marked a shift in tone from this White House, publicly saying this public hearing should happen. And once she said that, it really looked like it was only a matter of time before Republican leaders came to the same conclusion, that there was just too much pressure from all sides. And once you had a woman saying, I am willing to testify publicly and tell my story, and you had the Supreme Court nominee saying he was eager to clear his name and willing to testify as well, they really didn't have much of a choice.
Be quite something to behold next week. Nancy Cordes, thank you so much, Nancy.
You're very welcome.